Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
As we wind down 2024, and what a year it's been in so many ways, we take a moment to take a look at some of the big moments really in the broad ecosystem of communications. And joining us as he does each and every month for Inside Communications presented by Half Street Group is the founder and president of Half Street Group, Mike Raia. And Mike, welcome in. What a year, 2024.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Bill. Happy New Year, happy Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy everything.
So we're going to look at this from a couple of different angles today, from a crisis management response conversation, from a political conversation, from pop cultural standpoints. And I guess right out of the gate, just kind of taking a look at some of your own work that you've done this year, Half Street Group, your organization, which has had, by the way, congratulations on just an amazing year of growth. And you've been, you've received awards in this context, but also really just your fingerprints are all over a lot of media and a lot of things that are happening in the state and beyond that a lot of people wouldn't even realize, because by design, oftentimes comms are on background or in the background, and it's the organization or the leader, so to speak, that is public facing. But just kind of out of the gate, what are some of the most fun projects that you got a chance to work on this year?
That's a good question. So we've had a great year, and I appreciate you kind of putting some of that out. I think one of the things from an agency perspective that we were most proud of this year is we were named Providence Business News' fastest growing small business in the state, which is a testament to the great team that I've got here, our incredible clients, my family's willingness to kind of let me take this risk. But we've had a lot of really good things. Like and we've talked about this before. We work with some really dynamic organizations across the state. Very top of mind nonprofits. We work with some really dynamic leaders. And it's hard to hone down on just what is the one or two best things or most fun things that we did. But there was one thing that is it was more outside of our our usual box that I think when you ask that question, jumps to mind. We're working with an organization, Boys Town, New England. It's a national organization. They work with youth and with foster families, and they have a New England presence in Portsmouth. And through our summer intern, we were able to connect them with Caden Wallace from the New England Patriots. And he's a rookie. He's getting some playing time. And as terrible as the Patriots are this year, he's in the mix. And he chose Boys Town, New England as the charity that he wanted to work with for the My Cause, My Cleats initiative that the NFL does. So our team got to work directly with him, directly with Boys Town and the kids that are involved in Boys Town to paint his cleats for a game the week before Thanksgiving. Caden came down to Rhode Island and did an event where they unveiled the cleats and is going to be working with the NFL and with the organization to continue to be able to promote that partnership. But what made this cool, and yes, working with the NFL is a lot of fun. My team had a great kick out of it, but this is literally something that came about. We had an amazing intern working with us this summer, Jackson Duffy, who found out that the Caden Wallace Foundation was looking to meet nonprofits. There was an event that was happening that he came into the office and pitched us on and said, we think that we should do this and invite, or I think you should do this and you should invite all of your nonprofit clients to it. And we did. And it was through our intern, through Jackson, that we were able to make this connection. So for us, it's this full circle moment. Our team got to do these really cool things. These shoes are massive. The realizing how big professional athletes are. I say this as a 5'7" and 160-pound guy sitting in my desk. It was like when I've been at the Smithsonian and I saw Shaq's shoes for the first time.
Sure, yeah.
These athletes are amazing physical specimens. So it was a cool event. It was a cool partnership, and we're still able to reap some benefits from it. We're still working with our client around it, and I think that's something when I talk to my team, what do we want to do in 2025? They're all can we find a way to replicate something like that for other clients?
Yeah, so cool. And like you said, the fact that it was generated at the intern level is also something that's really cool and speaks volumes about your organization, that you're able to include the opinions and the ideas of people, including interns. But you know, we hear a lot about give back. We hear a lot about sort of infiltrating an ecosystem of generosity, and sometimes that really is just a branding move. But it sounds like you guys really got involved in this project, and it's something that resonates internally, and a lot of organizations can take a page from that book of yours, so to speak, in terms of how they get involved in helping to uplift organizations and those in need.
Yeah, it's something that we try to do a lot. And part of it is because we know who our clients are. We are working predominantly with nonprofits, social impact organizations, corporations that are based here in Rhode Island and are focused on job growth or skills upgrades and making Rhode Island a better, more competitive place. So it just becomes a natural offshoot of that. And even beyond there, it gives our team that opportunity to be able to feel like they are making a substantive difference or a substantive contribution here in Rhode Island. I think one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, I'm in the process of doing some of our end of year accounting and other things. 90% of our billable this year was with Rhode Island based organizations. 85% of our clients over the course of the year were with Rhode Island based organizations. And it is a testament to the fact of there is a lot of work to be done in this state and a lot of work to go around in this state. And anyone thinking about starting a business here should absolutely look at jumping in with both feet, because it is a competitive marketplace. But it's also a point of pride of we get to see the fruits of our work in the communities that we live in the communities that we recreate in the communities that we work in. And I think that's something as we're growing our business, as we're looking for to expand our partnerships that we're really able to hang our hat on. And it's something I think particularly, I don't mean to get all Jesuitical and sappy about it, but there is something that is this time of year meaningful in that work to be able to reflect back on.
Well, one thing here in Rhode Island that we've seen is, unfortunately, we've seen some crisis communications efforts on a lot of things. But of course, the Washington Bridge jumps out as really the major story there. And certainly I'm on record in my take on what that particular crisis, well, what lacked in the communications effort around that particular crisis. But I think it's important to raise, hey, what works, what is good, what is a functional and what represents what you as a crisis communication specialist would advise your clients to do. So the simple question is, in your mind, what was the best crisis communications response that you saw, whether it be local or national?
Bartholomew Town.
Birds are disappearing from our landscape at a rapid pace. Over 1/3 of those breeding on Audubon Society of Rhode Island's wildlife refuges are in decline. Climate change has taken a toll on their migration, nesting, and food sources. While science is highlighting the problem, Audubon is working on real solutions with a plan to rapidly reduce their carbon emissions. The organization will be free of fossil fuels by 2030, with renewable energy powering Audubon's buildings, equipment, and vehicles. To shape our future, all of us must act. Learn more about Repowering Audubon, their avian research, and how you can join their fight for climate resiliency. Visit asri.org/repower. Newport Film screens the latest, critically acclaimed documentary films year-round across Rhode Island. Like a film festival, Newport Film often gets early access to films before they're available online or in the theaters. Stay up to date on their latest screening events at newportfilm.com or on Instagram @NewportFilm. Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible, asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental science, and more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Are you ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communication, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Raia for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org.
Ooh, that's a hard question, because the reality is the best crisis communications responses are the ones that we don't know about. And we tell our clients that oftentimes when we have organizations or people reach out to us and say, we need reputation management support or we need crisis management support, we want to be like, get us in the news. We want to tell our story. We want to correct the record. A lot of what the work is to actually be able to help them navigate through to the natural completion of what that reputation matter is or what that crisis matter is. I think that there's a lot in 2024 that we can all look back on and learn from the Washington Bridge. And I think that you did 3 hours of radio on it earlier this week on WPRO when you were filling in. And I think that you hit on a lot of the different points. And I know it's certainly something that I bring up in some of our training that we do of, you want to tell your story first. You want to be able to make sure that you're answering every question to completion, that you want to be able to acknowledge the things that you don't yet have answers to, and be frank and truthful with people about when you think you'll have the answer to it, why you don't have the answer to it, and what the unknowns are. And I think people often laugh at the old Donald Rumsfeld of there are known knowns and known unknowns and unknown unknowns and all of those other things. But there is some truth to it. And there's authenticity in communicating some of that in the manner of being forthright with folks of, in the moment, you don't necessarily know everything. And those are some of the areas where I think that Rhode Island's response to the bridge crisis got them in trouble. They didn't have all of the answers of what caused the failure. As you brought up the other day, was it a cataclysmic event? Was it a big truck that rolled over it? Was it a whale that bumped into something? Who knows? So using that as a bit of a preamble of like, what are some of the things that you should do, of telling your story first, answering questions to completion, providing that room for objective criticism and objective skepticism. To me, one of the things that we saw most front and center on a national basis was Maryland's response to its bridge crisis in that capacity. And I don't think it's fair to do an apples to apples comparison of the Washington Bridge to the Key Bridge in Maryland. Very different circumstances around them. I think that the had a crisis or a catastrophe like that happened at the Newport Bridge, I think that Rhode Island's response would have been very different because the circumstances would have demanded it to be. That said, you had Westmore out in front talking with the general public through the media, not talking to the media. I think that's one of the things that's a big difference here is in many cases, Rhode Island's response has been talking to the media and talking about the media, whereas Maryland, Westmore used the media to talk to the general public. He answered the questions that were there. And then most importantly, he had the internal operational response buttoned up. They had a bid to be able to get their bridge replaced. They were able to clear the passageway in a forthright and rapid timeline to be able to reopen the Port of Baltimore. They were able to rally the community around what the response would be, rather than tell people what you're experiencing isn't truth or isn't fact. So I think that there's a lot from a governmental response that we can learn. And I think that even if we weren't dealing with our own bridge here in Rhode Island, I still think that Westmore's response would probably be the thing that I would hold up in that. And I do think that he is a generational communication talent. I think that he is someone who is going to be on our radars for the next decade to 2 decades. He's incredibly smart. He's incredibly well connected. He's incredibly ambitious. He lives and represents a top tier media market. So I don't think that we're going to see less of Westmore in the years to come. And I think that will continue. And I think that in some ways he leveraged the moment in that crisis and reputation response as the chance to be able to define and introduce himself.
And one of the things about the Washington Bridge response that's surprising when we look back on 2024 is you can almost take a look at 2023 and the initial response and say, okay, they put out this story. The director, Peter Alviti, put out this story that a heavy truck went over the Washington Bridge and, that may have damaged it. And we had just inspected the bridge in July. It was totally fine. And then all of a sudden we had a problem. There's no systemic breakdown here. But what surprised me about 2024 is that they didn't really come out and say early on in the game, you know what? Hey, wait a second. Our initial impression of this is actually a lot different than, not just in the sense that we're now going to have to demolish the bridge, but also our initial assessment, our initial strategy, it was off. And we're still in the early stages of the first quarter of this game. We're at like when you're watching the NFL on CBS and you look up at the TV and it says 9 minutes and 46 seconds left in the first quarter. That's where we're at. There's plenty of time to turn this around. I'm surprised they didn't turn it around, given the fact that this is not a short flash in the pan type story. This is a long story. There was a lot of time to change that relationship.
Right. And you bring up a good point there too. And I think, and I don't want to necessarily like jump in and relitigate and beat this dead horse over and over again. But I think a lesson that any organizational leader should take from the last 366 days of the bridge is what you do early on matters. And it's not this, like your mother used to always tell you, it's like you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Like same is true in reputation management and crisis management. Like what you do early on determines whether or not you're going to have credibility or authenticity. And I think the governor said the other day in his press conference about the 2 finalists and the competition that's going to happen with them on the RFP to rebuild the bridge, that they're working to restore and to rebuild some of that credibility or working to restore some of that trust. That's really flipping hard when you have given constituencies or given audiences a reason to be cynical or a reason to not feel that credibility. It's not impossible. It's not to say that you can't do it. And like, I can look back at some of my experience in the Raimondo administration and other things where we had things like UHIP, or we had things that were challenging issues that we needed to spend political and media capital to be able to restore credibility. The manner to do it, though, is there needs to be an acknowledgement of what were the missteps. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a public flogging of them or a public confession to them, but a sincere, self-reflective recognition of those credible concerns or objections that individuals had or that people had is the surest way to be able to restore that credibility in those moments.
Well said. Looking out on the global stage, it's always fun to take a look at how brands, how organizations use social media. And we've seen something, and I think we'll get into it in just a moment. I kind of want to separate the conversations, but in a political context, how social media, be it TikTok or otherwise, in new media, podcasts, and whatever you'd call the sort of space that, long and short form interview programs that are digital first, wherever that lives, call it the new media if you'd like, the role that played in this campaign season. But just on a general level, what do you think some of the best use of social media in pop culture was this year?
Oh, man. So I got a couple. So let me start with one that actually even tricked myself. And I want to thread the needle on this because I don't want there to be any room to misconstrue the events around the kind of heartless murder of the United Healthcare CEO. That incident, though, I think there's no denying, and that crime, there's no denying, has turned into this pop cultural moment and something where it has taken over a conversation on social media. And there was the report of, or a meme that was going around of Burger King tweeting. They didn't do it. It was not Burger King tweeting, "We don't snitch," which, as someone who spent time in Maryland and watched The Wire, the memes of snitches get stitches and there's gives me a chuckle here and there. And I'm not making light of the circumstances in New York around this. But that to me jumped out. Like that was a pop culture moment where it connected into a brand. It connected into this other, part of the story that was there. And on the surface, it was I don't know if I can say ballsy, but it was a very risque thing for a brand to tweet. And it wasn't until just getting ready for this podcast today that I realized that they didn't actually do it. Like it was a parody account or a fake account around it. And I was ready to talk about how they had all of these sophisticated rapid response approval processes and everything else to be able to go into it. But in learning that it wasn't them, to me, it's actually really reflective of, in those pop culture moments, how important it is for you to have control over your brand and to be able to make sure that your brand is not being compromised. And what are your mechanisms in place? And this is one where it's I was getting ready to be up here to talk about this kind of forward-leaning and kind of risque model that Burger King was taking. And now it's they've actually screwed up because they didn't have the mechanisms in place to be able to course correct and be able to get out to the general audiences that actually wasn't them. And they're losing control of their brand with other shirts and other things that are popping up on some of these print to order t-shirt factories where they're putting that "we don't snitch" quote. In terms of what are some of the other really good pop culture things, I think it was an Olympic year. This is I know that seems like it was a long time ago. I got to give it to the Olympic athletes who were really, this was the first Gen Z Olympics. This was the first, in my eyes, social media Olympics. And we really got to see how sophisticated these athletes in some of these niche sports are to be able to break through. Whether it's the women's rugby six team, I can't recall her name, but there was the one of the athletes on there who was obsessed with Legos and turned her account effectively into, even though she wasn't getting paid by Lego, into the best commercial for Lego that I have seen since the movies came out 10 years ago. So I think in that capacity, and I think that's something that I look forward to going into 2026 with the Winter Olympics, where it's even more niche sports. And I think that we're going to see even more creativity of these athletes being able to step out and break through into a conversation that's not being had.
Really interesting. I would agree that we've seen niche members of society become brand ambassadors in a way that we could never have imagined before the advent of social media, and really the acceptance of social media as credible. Certainly, as you just brought up with the Burger King incident, there's a lot of gaps. The checks and balances aren't there that you'd find in traditional media, but it's been elevated. And to that point, this year, the presidential election, I think when we look back on this, we'll see it as certainly a major shift in the direction that candidates not should, not may want to, but have to take when it comes to getting their message out. And that shift involves the use of podcasts. It involves the use of social media from a native standpoint, their own work. You take a look at the Kamala HQ account and literally hiring a bunch of Gen Z kids to make content all day for the vice president and her campaign, but also appearing on some of these platforms that in, I don't know, 2016, it would be hard to imagine that anybody who wants to maintain any level of credibility would touch. Huge shift. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's the natural evolution of it. I mean, if you look back, like 1960 was the first television campaign. 1992 was the late night campaign when Bill Clinton was able to take his campaign to Arsenio Hall and to MTV News. 2008 was that kind of opportunity where Barack Obama really leaned into online in a way that no one else had, with maybe an exception of Howard Dean with the meetups. But Obama was the first candidate to be on Twitter. He was the first candidate to be able to sit down with bloggers and with folks like Bill Simmons, who created their own audience. So to me, it's the natural extension of it. And I think in this circumstance, I think Republicans have been better at this than Democrats have for the last 6 years. And in some ways, and maybe this is the optimist in me, like trying to find silver linings in different things, I do think that it is a bit of a democratization of what our electoral politics can be if, and I say this with a caveat, if the Democrats can figure out how to do it. Because those platforms like the Seth Rogen shows or like some of the other bro-y podcasts or crypto podcasts that are out there is a lot of content that is being produced, that is being steered directly to the end audience that have nothing to do with politics. And people are turning to those places to be able to get a sense of what else is happening in those conversations. I mean, not dissimilar to the conversations that you have, where you've got the CEO of RIPTA on one day, but then you've got a musician from Newport Folk Festival on the next day. That there is ample opportunity for conversations that don't necessarily need to be about policy or about congressional procedure or about electoral horse races, that give people an understanding of what do they like about candidates or what do they like about people representing. And this is something that the Democrats just have not been good at. I think Kamala Harris did as good a job as she could have in 100 and however many days it was to be able to break through that, and showed what the formula can be. But for the last 6 years, the last 4 years, Democrats have been having a conversation with themselves through Chuck Todd, rather than getting out and having the conversation with Howard Stern or with Call Me Daddy or with Bill Simmons or with Charlemagne, which they should be doing on a weekly basis, not just when they're going and asking people for a vote. So that's what I'm hopeful. I hope that in this kind of autopsy of what happened in 2024 to the Democrats, that there is a reckoning of, we can't ignore low propensity voters. We can't ignore apolitical audiences until 6 weeks before an election. We need to be able to have conversation. And also, frankly, we need to get comfortable, and Democrats need to get comfortable talking like normal human beings. I think part of where the Republicans have done better with younger male voters, white voters, and even some of these minority groups that appear to, we don't know definitively yet. And I think anyone that's trying to make a clear cut, we know what happened in 2024 right now, needs to calm down. But we need to be willing to go and just talk like normal human beings. Don't be afraid to curse on some of these podcasts. Don't be afraid to talk about pop culture. Not everything needs to become a goddamn conversation about public policy ideology. So that's what I'm hopeful for in that we learn from it. But I do see it, to go back to the other point, as the natural progression.
Yes. It makes a lot of sense. And kind of pivoting off of that to the next question, the best book you read this year, I'll give you mine, which ties right into that, Polarized by Degrees. And the executive summary is that the Democratic Party has relied way too much on the Ivy League and sort of corporate realm in terms of formulating their roster and in terms of formulating their brand. The full title of the book, Polarized by Degrees, How the Diploma Divide and the Culture War Transformed American Politics. And I thought it was a really interesting read because it really speaks to exactly what you just said. One, the echo chamber. Two, not reaching people who have either a low propensity for voting in general, or that weekly conversation, the long game of, hey, you know what? The average person out there, they're not an Ivy League grad. They don't follow the markets. They don't read the city.nyc or the Hill every single day or Punchbowl News or anything like that. And you need to be able to reach them and win them over. So that would be my book of the year. I wonder yours.
Yeah. So I'll say one thing. I haven't read that one yet. It's on my list now. But to that point, we say in our media trainings, like, your audience is not an expert, but they're really smart. That's the thing that Democrats don't realize. They think they need to explain everything to everybody. Like, accept and acknowledge the premise that the audiences that you're engaging are smart. They're just not experts. So instead of trying to teach them, like, try to persuade them or try to make them feel something. Yeah. So my book this year, I went the opposite route. I kind of tuned out the politics stuff, and I spent the year reading sports business books, and I just finished Say Nothing Say Nothing. I haven't watched the series yet, but the best one I read is The Formula. I've never watched an F1 race. I watched a little bit of the Netflix series during COVID, but not a ton. These guys, Joshua Robinson and Jonathan Cleage, are two Wall Street Journal sports reporters. They've written two other excellent books on English Premier League. One is called The League, and it's on the founding of English Premier League and how it modeled itself on the NFL. Then the follow-up to that was Ronaldo versus Messi. And it told the whole story, not about their rivalry on the pitch, but about their rivalry in the boardroom and how they both turned themselves into billion-dollar brands. Yeah. This one is about the 70-year story of Formula One racing, all the politics in it, all of the maneuvering in it, the technological advances that are in it. I read it in a day and a half on vacation earlier this fall. It's excellent. I highly, highly recommend it. It's in hard copy at Barrington Books, has several of them on the shelf. I saw it there earlier this week. I'm sure it's available at Books on the Square and any other local bookstore, but highly, highly recommend it. Lots of business lessons in it. And they're just like, these guys are incredible, incredible writers.
Really interesting. And you mentioned Barrington Books. I'd be remiss not to shout out Ken Block and Disproven, which I did a book talk with. Ken Block, a lot of people know him. He ran for governor as one, a Republican, then as the moderate party candidate. And he's just sort of a guy who's around Rhode Island politics. He was hired by the Trump campaign after 2020 to investigate election fraud. And guess what? He didn't find anything substantial. He wrote a very thorough book. And in my opinion, one, we're biased because we love our Rhode Islanders. But in my opinion, it really lays out the case of just how nonsensical the Trump election fraud scenario is, especially when you've got a guy who is anything but a far left anti-Trump. Well, maybe you could make the argument he's anti-Trump, but he went into it from the standpoint of the campaign probably looked at him and said, this guy can do data. He seems conservative. He seems smart. Let's let him have a crack at it. And he came up with nothing. I think it's a really good localized version of a national conversation that right. I think that people are starting to realize, all right, the stupidity around that is off the charts.
Yeah.
In general.
I'm looking forward to Ken's follow-up book about taking his dog on beach walks and being able to park his car near those beaches in Barrington.
Absolutely. That's still to come. Best show you saw this year?
Oh, man. This is probably recency bias, but my wife and I are deep into the second season of Bad Sisters right now. And I'd say it's actually one of the few limited series where the second season is as good and as suspenseful as season one. So I put that one there. The one that's on my list that I haven't watched yet, I need to watch the Red Sox documentary on Netflix. I'm not a Sox fan, but I'm a huge baseball fan. We've talked about this a lot. I'm the vice president of the local Little League. I'm a sucker for a good baseball story. That's one I'm really looking forward to. And then I'm looking forward to in 2025 when Netflix releases its short documentary on the fans giving Trey Turner the standing ovation to get him out of a slump.
Yeah, great stuff. And I also haven't seen that. In 2004, I was a diehard Red Sox fan to the point where literally all I did was listen to sports talk radio and watch Red Sox games and so on.
That was healthy for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was great. It definitely shaped, it may explain a lot. I don't watch a lot of shows, and I've talked about that in the past, but I did get sucked into a show called Presumed Innocent this year. Really, it's not that deep, but I enjoyed it a lot because it was a chance to take a look at one. It was just sort of a murder mystery type of deal. I think it was on Netflix, but what I liked about it was that the sophistication of the court proceedings involved in this show, it's that same thing you just said, where your audience isn't an expert, but they're smart. And through it, you learned, at least I learned, and I know it's a sensationalized version because it's a fictional show, but I just thought it was an interesting look at a contemporary murder trial. And from an evidentiary standpoint, from a discovery process, the nerd in me and the storyteller in me were kind of connected on that series. So Presumed Innocence would be and I didn't watch a lot of shows this year. I didn't even watch the Patriots docuseries. I've got to catch up on that as well. So
yeah, I haven't seen the Patriots one, and we were talking about the Patriots earlier today. Everything I've heard on that one was it was even more of a commercial than Last Dance was. Yeah. But the Red Sox one I've heard even Yankees fans have said it was really well done. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking forward to being able to jump into.
All right, our last couple of minutes here, and it's time for something that has become you think about the Big Blue Bug, you think about the Newport Folk Festival, you think about the Newport Bridge, you think about Olneyville, New York system, and you think about the Mike Raia annual Ed Cooley PR do-over as a Rhode Island institution. So with that, I turn it to you.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on that last year. So I got two this year. I think first off, kind of keeping with the sports theme, the UCLA coach at the beginning of the year should definitely get a redo on that ridiculous press conference when he was first rolled out. Classic example of someone mailing it in during their media training, not listening to the folks that probably spent days, if not weeks, doing prep for him and getting him ready for that moment. So when you're in a position that you're standing in front of a bunch of cameras, don't go up and wing it. Like, just don't. The more localized one, I'd actually give a do-over to everybody involved with the recent Hasbro news. And I don't fault anybody. I don't think that there's anything that anyone's doing necessarily wrong. I think the state is doing its job to make its argument for Hasbro to stay here. I think Hasbro is doing what it's supposed to do for its shareholders to look at what makes the most sense. But it seemed like everybody was caught by surprise by that Boston Business Journal story. Yep. And I think that the do-over for Hasbro would be to be more buttoned up on their internal communications and have a story that they wanted to tell to their employees. I think the do-over for the state would be that on an operational level, they should have been more engaged with Hasbro so that this didn't seem like it was caught by surprise. And they probably should have been a little bit more confident or a little bit more steadfast in their immediate response to not give room for anybody to question their response. So I think that's where I would look at this. I don't think that the award this year is as kind of big. It's not a Stanley Cup size trophy the way that it was last year for Ed Cooley with the mismanagement of the way that he left. And again, I stand by the thing, like, I don't begrudge Ed in any capacity. And I think that Providence College and the Friar system is better off for the years that we had him here. But I think in terms of the PR do-over, he's still probably the leader in the clubhouse as we do this annual, and we'll see if anyone surpasses him next year.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I guess mine would be, I think that the conversation around offshore wind has taken a turn this year in an interesting way, where for a long time it was kind of like, all right, you're either with us or you're against us. And there is still an element of that. But even from a political standpoint, more and more people are starting to realize, you know what, maybe there should be more of a community buy-in element here. And I would say that there was kind of everybody involved in this process, from the organization that formed, kind of driven by the Newport Preservation Society. They came out with sort of a miscellaneous number of how many millions of dollars, or pardon me, billions of dollars Newport was going to lose as a result of offshore wind. And then they put forth an attorney from Virginia who didn't really have a chance to explain what those numbers even meant. That didn't help the cause. It didn't help the cause, the candidates who were running on this issue and making things up that weren't scientific. I think there's middle ground where people who are opposed to offshore wind or the siting of offshore wind as it's currently constituted can work in actually hand in hand with organizations like Ørsted and their PR people to try to craft a message to say, here's what's working, here's what we want to see improved, and maybe there's middle ground going forward into the next phase of siting or ocean leasing, and maybe there could be a little bit more community buy-in on this issue. Instead, they went to the extreme. Yep. Every whale's going to be killed, and we're going to lose billions and billions of dollars because of a couple of turbines. And you go, man, you missed your moment. You missed a moment where there's an appetite for conversation about this, but not in a conspiracy way.
And not for nothing, is the Maryland transplant uses the Rhode Island vernacular. I think these things look kind of cool. Like, I'm not going to lie. When I go to Block Island, or when I'm flying back from DC or someplace else and fly over Block Island, like, I think the turbines look cool. I think they look great on the coastline. I think it's kind of a marvel of modern technology. I don't buy that whole preservation side of it. It's going to destroy our view, or like what the Kennedys used to say from the compound. Like, I think these things look cool. Like, put them up. They're like skyscrapers. Like, who doesn't love seeing the New York skyline? Like, this could be our skyline.
Yeah, and if you've got an opposition position, find a way to craft it in a way that is somewhere in between, that right. Actually is realistic. You know, don't just throw miscellaneous numbers out and, again, junk science to try to make your argument. Right. There is a community appetite for discussion, and I think that like I said, I think the firms involved would agree that let's have that discussion. Right. We'll give you our statistics and we'll give you our numbers, and maybe we'll learn something from you as well that we can do better to make this less of an aggressive moment. Right.
So at the risk of having like a total non sequitur here, I think you Sure. brought up some of the right whales and others. It reminded me of one other kind of end of year thing to throw out there. My favorite non-Bill Bartholomew podcast of 2024. I got sucked into The Good Whale, that serial in the New York Times did, about the life journey of Keiko, the whale from from Free Willy. Yeah. They did an episode that was a musical I want story for the whale that makes the whole podcast completely worth it. So that is my advice to anyone. If you have a trip, if you're driving to go see family this holiday season, listen to that. It's great for the whole family. Like, I listen to it with my kids in the car. I've been trying to convince my 13-year-old daughter and her friends to listen to the whole podcast. It's fascinating about what they did to try to be able to rewild this whale. But again, the musical episode where they pulled the lyricist and songwriter from Dear Evan Hansen to be able to build a 19-minute musical was one of the most innovative and thoughtful and creative podcast exercises in journalism that I've experienced this year.
Yeah, it's something that I'm definitely inspired by. Stay tuned for 2025. There may be a Washington Bridge musical coming soon to a podcast near you.
You bringing Lin-Manuel Miranda to Rhode Island to help you?
I think we might have to at this point with that sort of setup. Mike Raia, Half Street Group, halfstreetgroup.com. Happy New Year, my friend, and thanks for a great year of conversation here on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Bill. Happy New Year. Can't wait to do it again in 2025.
Let me tell you about my friends at Half Street Group. They bring a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. And you can join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Raia for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.